أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. This is lesson 19 on the course إرشاد الطلبة إلى التمييز بين القراءات العشرة. In the previous chapters we looked at the singular applications, we looked at the combined applications, and we looked at some farshi changes. So we've learned to discern between all of the qira and ruwat of the 7 qira'at. So before we move on to the 3 qira'at that complete the 10, because we've covered quite a bit, just to recap, we're going to look at it again in the form of summaries. So the summaries are in the form of diagrams or tables. And it should be borne in mind that this is restricted to the 7 qira'at. We haven't yet touched anything regarding the 3 qira'at. So we're going to be assuming whenever you hear any recitation other than Hafs, we're going to base it on the assumption that it is from the Sab'ah. You first bear that in mind, and then afterwards consider the possibility of it perhaps being one of the 3 qira'at. Why? Because most of the recitations that you're going to hear, which is other than Hafs, most of it is going to be from the Sab'ah. The most common application that you're going to hear is the mad, right? It comes in almost every single verse. So therefore, we're first going to look at the Sab'ah, all the 7 qira'at, and differentiate them first according to the length of mad that they apply. And then thereafter, we're going to separate them further based on the other applications in the diagrams that follow. So for the 7 qira'at, if you hear qasr in mad munfasil, then it's going to be either Qalun, Ibn Kathir, Duri, or Susi. If you don't hear qasr, but you hear tawassut, then it's going to be one of Qalun, Duri, Ibn Amir, Asim, or Kisa'i. And if you don't hear tawassut, but you hear tul, then it is either Warush or Hamza. So you first listen to the mudud in order to narrow it down to these combinations of qurra. Now we're going to look at each of them separately and see how to differentiate between them. So for those who make qasr, so you've heard in the recitation that qasr has been applied. So now you listen for sila of the mimul jam. If you hear that, then it's going to be either Qalun or Ibn Kathir, either one of the two. Then how can you differentiate them? You now listen for sila, but of the ha'ul kinaya. Not of the meme, but of the ha'ul kinaya. If you hear that, then you know it is Ibn Kathir. But if there's no sila of the ha'ul kinaya, then that means it is Qalun. If you don't hear sila, but instead you hear either idgham kabir or ibdal, meaning ibdal of the ya sakina into a letter of mad, then you can figure out that that is the riwayah of Susi. If you don't hear any of these, you don't hear Sunnah of the Meme or Idgham Kabir or Ibdaw, but you hear Imala being applied. Imala in any of the categories with Qasr will be Duri, right? If you don't hear the Idgham Kabir, you don't hear the Ibdaw, and you've excluded Susi, then that Imala must then therefore be for Duri Basri. And if you don't hear any of these applications, then that will be Qalun. Remember that Qalun, yes, the option of the Sunnah of the Mimul Jam, but you can also read without that. So if you don't hear any of these changes over here, but you hear Qasr, then it is possibly Qalun that is being recited for. I say possibly because you can read for Hafs with Qasr as well, but that is via the Kubra, not via the Shatibiyya. So now looking at those that make tawassut, you've heard that application in the qira'ah. Now you look further. If we hear imala being applied with tawassut, that means it is either duri, meaning duri basri, or kisai. That is one of the 3 categories of the watul ya, the watul ra, or the ramak, surah mutadarrifa. But now if you hear imala being applied in the time marbuta as well, when making waqf on it, then that means that it is kisai. And if you don't hear that, then that will be duri basri. I haven't indicated here, but you can differentiate between Abu al-Harith and Duri Kisai by the category of imala in the Ra Maksura. If it is not present, then it is Abu al-Harith. If it is present, then it will be Duri Kisai. If you hear tawassut, but you don't hear imala, instead you hear sila of the mim al-jam with tawassut, then it is only qalun. It will not be ibn kathir, it will be qalun. If you don't hear any of these changes, but you hear certain farshi changes, then it will be, I can identify between Hisham, Ibn Dhakwan, or Shu'bah. Hisham, the farshi change to look out for is the recitation of Ibrahim. Ibn Dhakwan is to listen for Ja'a and Shay'a with the wasut. And for Shu'bah, it is to listen for the word Rulwan. If you hear none of these changes, then it is just the normal recitation of Hafs. Lastly, for those that apply Qul in the Mudud, in the Muttasil and the Munfasil, that will narrow it down to Warush or Hamza. I can identify them very easy. You can either look for Mad Badal or Madleen or Tanqiq of the Ra or Taghlil of the Lam or Naql. Any of these 5 applications are identified as being Warush. Out of all the riwayat other than Hafs, Warush is the easiest one to identify due to the abundance of applications that are unique to the riwayah of Warush. If you hear none of those changes, but you hear idgham being applied without gunna in the ya and the waw, that means that it is the riwayah of Khalaf. And if you don't hear that, then that will be Khalad. Remember that both Khalaf and Khalad, they have sakt, and they also have imala in certain other categories. So the table that follows, that is firstly a table looking only at the single applications and then the combined applications. In the previous video, I've already gone through this table of the single applications. So we're going to skip that and go to the combined applications. In the Mad Munfasil and Muttasil, looking at both the Mudud, if you have a combination of 2 and 4 harakat, then it's either Qalun, Ibn Kathir, Duri, or Susi. If you have both being applied as tawassut, then it is either Qalun, Duri, Ibn Amir, Asim, or Kisai. And if you have tool in both of the Madud, that means it is Warush or Hamza. If you have Sila the Mimul Jam, that means it's either Qalun or Ibn Kathir. Then we have the 3 categories of Imala. The first one was the Watul Ya, ending in a Alif Maqsura, that is Hamza in Kisai. Then we have the Watul Ra, ending in an Alif Maqsura, but preceded by a Ra. Again, you have Hamza in Kisai, but now Abu Amr joined them as well. And then you have the Ra Maqsura, Mutatarrifa, coming at the end of a word. Then you'll have Abu Amr and Duri Kisai applying Imana. This is a recap and a revision summary of what we've covered so far in the previous chapters of how you can identify between the 7 qira'at. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.